Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's De-JOE-tional. Susan and I are sitting in our Jeep. We took the top off just a few days ago for Father's Day. Just took the doors off today. Life is good, man, right, Sue?
Yep.
We're just out kind of chilling. We just got done walking. Everything is great. No worries today. We're sitting under the shade, just recording De-JOE-tional. And we're just pretty happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which brings me to today's topic. Happiness is a problem. So we're continuing with our book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a, according to Mark Manson. It's a counterintuitive approach to living a good life. And Mr. Manson starts off this chapter by telling the story of a legend of a king who had a son and kept the son locked up, or not really locked up, but he wasn't allowed to leave the castle, wasn't allowed to leave the castle grounds. He was kept in. He was protected by all the negative things in the world. He got everything he could ever want. He had toys and games and plenty of food and all. I mean, everything was good. All the bad stuff was outside the castle walls. And then one day, the prince snuck out and went out into the real world. And in the real world, he saw homeless people, poverty-stricken people, people with no money and no food, and really, really struggling. And as the legend goes, he decided to I guess dedicate his life for a while to that lifestyle. So he didn't go back to the castle, didn't go back to the king and all the comforts and protection of the castle. He stayed out in the open amongst the chaos. And he found out before too long that life was not very good either. So he was unhappy when he was given all the benefits of life, and unhappy when he was given all the trials of life. So he sat and came to a number of profound realizations. Easy for you to say. One of them is life itself is a form of suffering. The rich suffer because of the riches. The poor suffer because of their poverty. People without a family suffer because they have no family. People with a family suffer because of their family. People who pursue worldly pleasures suffer because of their worldly pleasures. And people who abstain suffer because of their abstention. Now, this isn't to say that all suffering is equal. Some suffering is certainly more painful than other sufferings, but we all must suffer nonetheless. There's a premise that underlies a lot of our assumptions and beliefs. And that premise is that happiness can be worked for or earned, like being accepted to a school or making a soccer team or building an awesome Lego project. It does say Lego project. It does.
Uh-huh.
And we think if we just achieve X, then we'll be happy. If we can look like Y, we'll be happy. If we can be with a person like Z, we can be happy. The premise, though, is the problem. This premise is the problem. Happiness is not a solvable equation. Dissatisfaction and unease are inherent parts of human nature, and as we'll see, necessary components to creating consistent happiness. So Mr. Manson goes on to say further in the chapter, pain in all its forms is our body's most effective means of spurring action. Now, take something as simple as stubbing your toe. Have you walked through the family room before and stubbed your toe on the coffee table? What do? Confound it! Coffee table! We yell at this inanimate object that has, I mean, the coffee table didn't just jump out in front of us. Or we go on to say, well, who in their stupid right mind put this idiotic table here in the first place? That was you. But we learned something from that experience. What do you think we learned from that experience? Watch where you're going.
There you go.
Right?
Yep.
Watch where you're going. So, pain, that horrible stub toe induced pain, exists for an important reason. Physical pain is a product of our nervous system, a feedback mechanism to give us a sense of our own physical proportions, where we can and cannot move, and what we can and cannot touch. This pain, as much as we hate it, is useful. Pain is what teaches us what to pay attention to when we're young or careless. It helps us show what's good for us versus what's bad for us. It helps us understand and adhere to our own limitations. It teaches us not to mess around hot stoves or stick metal objects in electrical sockets. Therefore, it's not always beneficial to avoid pain and seek pleasure, since pain can at times be a life or death importance to our well-being. But pain is not merely physical. We humans are capable of experiencing acute psychological pain as well. Isn't that right, Sue? Mm-hmm. Sue says, yes, that's right. Oh, shit. And like our physical pain, our psychological pain is not necessarily always bad or even undesirable. In some cases, experiencing emotional or psychological pain can be healthy or necessary. Just like stubbing our toe, or if we put stuff in a light socket. I know my daughter Natalie, remember Natalie when she burned her fingers on the barbecue grill?
Oh, yeah, when she was in her walker.
She was in her walker, so she was just learning how to walk. And she went, oh, barbecue grill, and stuck both of her hands right on it. And yeah, burned her fingers. Guess who never touches a barbecue grill now? Natalie does not.
That was our fault, though, not hers.
Of course it was our fault. Everything was our fault. All right. You learn from those things. When you touch a hot grill, you learn to not touch a hot grill. And in psychological pain, we learn what relationship mistakes we make, and we learn from those kinds of things as well. But our happiness comes from solving problems. Problems are a constant in life. They never stop. They merely get exchanged or upgraded. Happiness comes from solving problems. The key word here is solving. We can't avoid our problems or pretend that they don't exist. Happiness, therefore, is a form of action. It's an activity, not something that is passively bestowed upon you, not something that you magically discover in a top-tier article or from a specific guru or teacher or devotional person. You don't find it waiting for you in a place, an idea, or a job. Happiness is a constant work in progress because solving problems is a constant work in progress. The solutions of today's problems will lay the foundations for tomorrow's problems, and so on. It's one of my favorite parts of the book here. True happiness occurs only when you find the problems you enjoy having and enjoy solving. Whatever your problems are, the concept is the same. Solve problems, be happy. Unfortunately for many people, life doesn't feel that simple. That's because they mess things up in at least one of two ways. One is denial. They pretend like they have no problems. Problems don't exist, and therefore problems don't get solved. Because they deny reality, they distract themselves from reality. They lead a life of insecurity, neuroticism, and emotional repression because they pretend that problems don't exist. Or they have a victim mentality. Or some choose to believe that there's nothing they can do to solve their problems when in fact they could. Victims seek to blame others for their problems or blame outside circumstances. People deny and blame others for their problems for the simple reason that it's easy and it feels good, while solving problems is hard and often feels bad. I talked about that in another De-JOE-tional. We all want the end result, but we're not willing to do the work to get there. How much better do you feel when you take on a task that's meaningful to you and you complete that task? You feel better about it, right? If you set a task to paint a room, let's say, right, Sue? Paint a room. It takes a lot of hard work. You got to move the furniture out in the middle. You got to tape. You got to scrape and wash and then paint and primer or whatever. You got to, there's a lot of steps to it. And when you get it done, you're like, yeah, I did that. Cool. But if you pretend like things don't happen, you're going to have a hard time. You've solved the problem of a bad-looking room, bad-looking paint job by repainting. All right? Are you following me so far?
Yep.
So the key then in all this is to choose your struggle. If I ask you, what do you want out of life? And you say something like, I want to be happy and have a great family and a job I like. Your response is so common and expected that it doesn't really mean anything. Everybody enjoys what feels good. Everybody wants to live a carefree, happy, and easy life. To look perfect, to make money, and be popular, well respected, and admired. Everybody wants that. It's easy to want that. A more interesting question, a question that most people never consider is, and I love this one, what pain do you want in your life? What are you willing to struggle for? Because that seems to be a greater determinant of how our lives turn out. Now follow me here. Are you following me here? Most people want to make a boatload of money, but they don't want to suffer through 60-hour work weeks, long commutes, obnoxious paperwork, corporate hierarchies, etc. Most people want to have an awesome relationship, but they're not willing to go through the tough conversations, the awkward silences, the hurt feelings, and the emotional cycle drama to get there. Happiness requires struggle. Happiness grows from problems. Real, serious, lifelong fulfillment and meaning have to be earned through the choosing and managing of our struggles. Remember when we did the Mr. Rogers series in the fall? What was one of the key points of that? About managing your struggles. Do you remember? She was locked in for sure. If you can mention it, you can manage it.
Oh, yeah.
If you ignore it, you can't. If you pretend they don't happen, you can't manage it. But if you mention it, you can manage it. So, you have to choose. You can't have a pain-free life. It can't all be roses and unicorns all the time. So what is the pain that you want to sustain? That's the hard question that matters, the question that will actually get you somewhere. Look, for example, our Extreme Church Makeover. There's a lot of hard work. We all wanted a beautiful looking, more churchy looking sanctuary. But what do we have to do to get there? We can't just snap our fingers and make a wish and poof, it happens. We have to make some hard decisions about priorities. What do we need? What don't we need? How can we afford it? How can we raise money? Where to put the stained glass window? That's been the toughest one, but we found a spot and it's on its way, and we'll get to more of that later. But and you got to go through people combating. Do we really need to do all this? There's all kinds of stuff. But when it's done, when it's the steps we've made and the different stages we've completed, people have been very happy. But they don't want to go through the fight to get there. So let me see how many. So yeah, they want the reward, but not the struggle. They want the result, but not the process. Life doesn't work that way. Who you are is defined by what you're willing to struggle for. People who enjoy long work weeks and the politics of the corporate ladder are the ones who fly to the top of it. People who enjoy the stresses and uncertainties of the starving artist lifestyle are ultimately the ones who live it and make it. Our struggles determine our successes. Our problems birth our happiness, along with slightly better, slightly upgraded problems. Does that all make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Are you just saying that so we can get done with the recording
No.
and move on to something else?
No.
So, there are things you're not going to want to take on. That's fine. Just as long as you recognize that they're there. You can't ignore that you have problems in life. You can't ignore that you're going to have to work to get a result. But you have to choose what you want to struggle. I mean, if you want the reward, you have to go through the struggle. So choose what reward you want. Not by the reward, but choose which struggle you're willing to go through to get there. That make sense? That makes sense. All right, next week is my favorite chapter in the book. You are not special. I love it. You are not special. And we live in a society we all think we're special, right? Where my opinion matters more than anybody. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion as long as they agree with mine. Right? Yeah. So we'll get to that next week. So that's the end of this De-JOE-tional. Blessings, God first.